I'd buried the dream of fatherhood deep beneath snow and silence, same as the mountain buries old bones come winter. Nobody in Grafton paid much mind to a man like me. Heath Camden, 42 and good for nothing but splitting logs, trapping and drinking coffee black as tar. The doctor in Abilene had told me years ago, right to my face, that no child would ever carry my name. A bullet wound gone septic, a fever that cooked away the chance before I'd even known I'd wanted it. My wife left soon after. The cabin I'd built for a family was just a place to sleep and keep dry. I never planned to come down to town that day. I only meant to trade pelts for flour and maybe a coil of fresh rope. But the moment I heard the mayor's voice rising over the crowd, 3 children, siblings, orphaned and unclaimed, Grafton can't feed what the Lord himself won't provide. I felt a coldness deeper than winter. There they stood, 2 boys and a girl, thin as fence rails, eyes wide and wild. The oldest, a boy of maybe 10, glared like he dared anyone to pity him. The girl, not far behind in age, hugged herself, lips set in a line I knew too well. The littlest one, maybe 5, just shivered, clinging to a battered tin pail. Folks looked, away, muttering about hard times. Someone spat and turned their back. I caught the smallest one's gaze, eyes so dark they seemed to swallow the world. The mayor tried to start the bidding. Silence answered him. I saw his hand falter. The girl flinched as if expecting a blow. Then the smallest whispered something I couldn't quite hear. The syllable stuck in my chest. Pa. I stood there, boots rooted in muddy thaw, and felt something break loose inside me. I remembered the hollow echo of my own empty cabin, the sting of every winter spent alone, the quiet ache that never went away. $3, I said, my voice barely carried. The crowd snapped to life. Someone laughed, sharp and cruel. "You buying trouble, Camden?" Another jeered. "Sold!" the mayor barked before I could change my mind. The children stared. I could feel the whole town's eyes burning holes in my back. I fished the coins from my pocket. 3 silvers, cold as regret. The oldest boy refused to move at first. "You don't have to," I told him, but my voice cracked and he heard it. In the end, he took the girl's hand. The littlest one reached for mine. His palm was small and hot as fever. I walked them to my wagon. The girl kept glancing back as if someone might call her home. Nobody did. I tried to tell myself I was just doing the decent thing, but the truth was uglier. I was buying a chance at something I thought I'd lost. Maybe redemption, maybe just a voice in the house come morning. Either way, the bargain was struck. As we left Grafton behind, the youngest fell asleep against my arm, dreaming who knows what. The other 2 watched the woods, silent and wary. The snow started up again, gentle and relentless. 3 children, $3, and a man who'd long stopped believing in second chances. I never thought a cabin could feel so small. The children clustered just inside the threshold, shoes dripping meltwater, arms stiff with uncertainty. I'd always prided myself on solitude, a place for every pot and pan, chores done to the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. Now 3. Pairs of eyes took in every scratch on the floor, every patched chair and shelf crammed with odds and ends. The place looked shabby in a way I'd never noticed. Maybe it was the children's silence that made it echo. The oldest boy squared his shoulders like he expected a fight, or at least rules. "Name's Isaac," he muttered. His voice was low and careful, like he'd been hurt by kindness before. The girl looked from him to me, then stuck out her chin. "Nora." She didn't say more. The youngest peeked out from behind a wool scarf too big for his neck, refusing to let go of my hand. I crouched to his level, feeling awkward as a bear at a tea party. "What's your name, son?" He blinked at me, lips pressed tight, then whispered, "Lahi." He pronounced it with a hitch in his breath, and I nodded, as if I understood the weight behind it. That first supper was nothing but awkward. I'd only set out one bowl, as always. Nora fixed that quick enough, fetching more from the cupboard without being asked. Lahi kept glancing at me as if afraid I'd vanish. Isaac said nothing but ate like someone might snatch his meal away. I let them, figuring hunger trumped manners. Afterward, chores divided themselves with no discussion. Nora swept, Isaac chopped kindling, Lahi helped stack boots by the fire. I watched, a lump in my throat, realizing how much I'd missed the sound of others moving through the place. Night settled hard and early. I pulled blankets from the cedar chest, ones my wife had left behind, and made up beds by the fire. Lahi crawled in first, still clutching my old canteen. Nora curled around, her brother staring at the flames like they held answers. Isaac stayed awake longest, eyes on the door. As the wind howled outside, I sat at the table and tried to write a letter to the preacher in town, asking about proper guardianship. My hand shook so bad I gave up. Who was I to play at fatherhood? A barren man, alone for years, now trusted with 3 lives he'd bought for less than a sack of flour. I kept expecting them to bolt, or to find the place too cold, too quiet, too strange. But as days turned to weeks, something shifted. Nora began to hum as she swept, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp. Isaac, after much coaxing, let me show him how to mend a snare. Lahi trailed after me like a shadow, wordless but attentive, eyes always searching mine for some sign he belonged. There were rough moments. Nora accused me of spying when I tried to braid her hair. Isaac bristled whenever I corrected him. Lahi wet the bed twice, mortified, but Nora shooed me away before I could make it worse. Through it all, I kept my voice gentle and my hands busy, hoping patience would bridge what words could not. The neighbors noticed. Mrs. Weller, who lived down the trail, brought extra bread and left it on the stoop without a word. Mr. Dolan sent over a sack of apples, pretending it was a mistake. I thanked them with a nod, knowing Grafton folks could forgive a lot if you stayed quiet about it. By the first hint of spring, the 4 of us moved through the days like we'd always been this odd family. I didn't know what the law would say, or the preacher, or the town. But for the first time in years, the cabin felt like more than just a shelter. It felt like home. March pressed in, tight and mean, as if winter didn't want to let go. We settled into a rhythm, chores, lessons. By lantern light, Nora's quick temper flaring and fading, Isaac's awkward efforts at laughter. Lahi never said much, but started leaving little gifts for me on my workbench, pine cones, a feather, a smooth black stone. It was the first time in years I looked forward to mornings, but the mountain has a way of reminding a man how little control he really has. It started with a note nailed to the cabin door in the hush before dawn. I nearly stepped on it bringing in firewood, a scrap of feed sack, black scrawl across it. "They ain't yours. Don't forget it." Isaac saw it first. He didn't say a word, just handed it to me and waited. Nora demanded to know what it said. I lied at first. "Just someone selling a wagon." She didn't believe me. I burned the note in the stove, heart hammering in my chest. Old fears woke up. I hadn't asked much about the children's past, hadn't wanted to pry. But now, every creak in the trees sounded like footsteps. That night, the wind howled, carrying with it something sharp and uneasy. Lahi woke screaming, thrashing in his bedroll, insisting someone was outside. I grabbed the old rifle and stepped onto the porch, breath steaming, eyes searching the snow-dark woods. Nothing but the silence of a world waiting for spring. Still, I started sleeping lighter, boots by the bed, rifle loaded. Isaac kept a hatchet tucked under his pillow. Nora stopped humming. Even Lahi's small gifts dried up. For the first time since the auction, I caught him crying. I sat with him, awkward, hand on his shoulder. "Ain't nobody coming for you," I said. "Not while I'm here." It sounded brave. I hoped it was true. One evening, after chores, I spotted tracks, fresh in the snow behind the outhouse. Not coyote, not deer. Boots. Someone had circled the cabin and vanished into the woods. The children watched me discover this, waiting to see if I'd pretend not to notice. I didn't. I showed Isaac the tracks, let him follow me to the edge of the trees. "You're safe," I promised. His jaw set hard, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief, or maybe just the hunger to believe. Days passed in tension. I set extra snares, rigged tin cans as alarms along the trail, kept the fire stoked through the night. The mountain, usually a place of peace, felt suddenly narrow, like a trap closing around us. But as fear crept in, so did something else. The children clung tighter to each other, to me. Nora, usually prickly, took to baking biscuits. Isaac sharpened every tool in the cabin. Lahi insisted on sleeping beside my bedroll, fist tight around my thumb. One night, with a storm beating the roof, I sat at the table and found myself praying, not for safety, but for the strength to be enough. To stand between these children and whatever past might come clawing. I never thought of myself as anyone's shield. I'd failed at marriage, at fatherhood, at most things a man's supposed to do. But I'd made a bargain with the world, and I meant to keep it. Come morning, the note was gone, nothing left but the scar it left on all our hearts. The cabin was a fortress now. I wasn't sure if that was a mercy or a warning. Peace, if it could be called that, returned in a thin, brittle layer. Days passed where the biggest trouble was Nora arguing about the right way to mend a shirt, or Lahi insisting on feeding the mule peppermints. It almost felt normal. I started to hope, just a little, that we might outlast the winter and whatever. Shadows haunted the children's past. That hope died the day a stranger appeared at our door. He was tall and lean, clothes city-cut but dirty at the cuffs, a nervous glint in his eyes that said he knew more about running than resting. "Barlow," he introduced himself, hands open, voice too smooth. I let him in only because he claimed to know the children. Nora went white as bone. Isaac took Lahi by the hand and edged toward the corner. Barlow said he was kin to Lahi, on the mother's side. He asked questions that made my skin crawl, about our routines, who visited, whether we went to church. "Others will come," he said, and something cold coiled in my gut. I told him flat out, "These kids are home now?" He grinned like he knew a secret. "Nothing's ever truly yours up here, Camden. Blood always claims its own." Then he was gone, vanishing down the trail before I could think to stop him. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept watch by the fire, rifle on my lap, every sense straining for a sound. When dawn came, the children were gone. The beds were cold. The daughter cracked footprints leading down the slope. My heart stopped. I staggered outside, screaming their names, slipping in the icy ruts. Nora's scarf hung from a low branch, torn, as if she'd tried to mark a trail. Rage and guilt tangled in my chest. I should have locked the door, set a guard, done something more than trust in thin walls and good intentions. It wasn't hard to follow the tracks. Barlow didn't bother hiding his trail, likely confident I wouldn't risk it. He led them toward an old cave by Dead Man's Ridge, a place locals said was haunted by outlaws and regrets. I found the entrance, heart pounding, ears ringing with the echo of my failures. Inside, Barlow crouched by a dying fire, the children huddled behind him. "It's over, Camden," he called, voice thin as the wind. "You got no claim here." I raised my rifle, hands steady. "I got claim enough. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who cares." Barlow's eyes darted to Nora, then to Isaac. "Blood's thicker," he spat. "Maybe, but love runs deeper." I stepped forward, never lowering the rifle. Barlow lunged, desperate or mad. I'll never know. We grappled, boots scraping stone, my fist connecting with his jaw. He went down hard, blood smearing the dirt. Nora screamed. Lahi pressed his face to my coat. Isaac stood frozen, torn between fear and fury. When it ended, Barlow limped out into the snow, swearing vengeance and worse. I gathered the children close, my voice shaking as I promised, "Nobody takes you from me, not ever." We made our way home in silence, bruised but together. The cabin looked smaller, battered, but the fire inside had never felt so necessary. That night, Nora fell asleep with her hand in mine, Isaac by the door, Lahi curled at my feet. I sat awake, listening to the wind, and realized I'd fight the whole world if I had to. I wasn't a real father, not by blood, but I'd become one by choice, and I'd die before I let anyone undo that. We limped back to the cabin, battered and half frozen, but we were home. I could see the relief in the kids' faces. Even Isaac, who tried to act like it was nothing, hung around my elbow the rest of the day. Nora wouldn't let go of my sleeve. Lahi just kept touching my boot, as if making sure I wouldn't vanish if he blinked. There was a stillness in the air, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if we'd break. Healing came slow. Barlow's words lingered like a bad taste, and I slept in my chair with the rifle across my lap. Isaac started carving little notches into the bunk frame, one for each day we'd made it through together. Nora turned the kitchen upside down, baking what she called victory bread, though it was more salt than flour. Lahi stuck to me like a burr, saying more in 2 weeks than he had in 2 months. The three of them would break into laughter, at the smallest thing. Nora dropping eggs, Isaac whittling crooked spoons, Lahi mimicking my limp. Then hush, as if remembering joy was something to hide. Spring brought a new problem. A man in a black coat and badge rode up the trail, his boots shining and voice official. "Marshal Evans," he said, eyeing me and the children with a look that could freeze sap. Word had spread to town about my auction purchase. He didn't say the word kidnapping, but he let it hang in the air like smoke. I fumbled through my explanation, palms sweating. "Didn't steal 'em, Marshal, paid fair at the auction. Ain't nobody else wanted?" He cut me off. "Law don't see it that way. Guardianship ain't something you buy like a sack of beans." His eyes softened, just a flicker, but I caught it. "You want to keep these children? You'll need proper papers. You'll need witnesses. You'll need to prove you're fit." The thought nearly knocked me flat. I'd never been enough for anyone before. I barely believed I could be enough now. That night, after the marshal left, I sat the kids down. I told them the truth. "We might get split up. Law says so. But I'll fight for you. I swear it." Nora burst into tears. Isaac stared hard at the floor. Lahi crawled into my lap and hid his face in my shirt. I realized I'd already lost the old version of myself, the one who'd rather run than risk pain. Now I'd risk anything. Word spread in Grafton, as it does. Mrs. Weller and Mr. Dolan spoke for me to the marshal, vouching for my character, for the kids' happiness, for the bread and apples and all the small kindnesses. The preacher wrote a letter. Even the storekeep, who'd once said I'd end up dead in a ditch, vouched that the children seemed cleaner, fatter, and louder since coming to my place. Weeks passed in anxious waiting. We kept to our routines, planting potatoes, fixing the roof, telling stories by the fire. At last, the law decided. The children could stay, so long as I registered them and sent them to Sunday school. The day the marshal rode up with the papers, Isaac hugged me, nearly knocking us both over. Nora baked a cake, half raw in the middle, and we ate it straight from the pan. Lahi drew a picture, the four of us under a crooked pine, all smiling. I tacked it above the hearth. For the first time, I let myself believe it. We were a real family, as real as any made by blood. Maybe more so. The mountain gave us its first wildflowers by June, and for a while, life settled into something like peace. The children bloomed in ways I couldn't have imagined that icy day in Grafton. Isaac grew tall and sure, splitting wood with a confidence I never felt at his age. Nora took to reading. Every book Mrs. Weller could spare found its way to our porch. Lahi, quiet as ever, learned every bird call for miles around. Some days I caught myself smiling for no reason at all. But ghosts have a way of finding their way back, especially up here where the past can echo for miles. One late afternoon, as the sun burned the treetops gold, a figure appeared by the fence, a man, hat in hand, hair gray at the temples but eyes sharp as a hawk's. Nora froze mid-step, bread dough still clinging to her fingers. "That's him," she whispered. "That's my real pa." He stood just beyond the split rail, looking lost and smaller than I'd imagined. "Nora," he called, voice thin but earnest. "I've come a far piece to see you, to set things right if I can." She didn't run, didn't cry. She wiped her hands and walked out head high. Isaac grabbed my sleeve, tense, but I shook my head. "Let her." They spoke low for a long time. I couldn't hear the words, only the rise and fall of Nora's voice, the way she crossed her arms and then let them drop. The man, I learned later his name was Robert James, never tried to come closer than the fence. He apologized, over and over. Explained he'd been no good back then, that he'd tried to drink away his responsibilities. Said he'd spent years wishing he'd been different. Nora listened, chin trembling. Then she said, loud enough for the whole world to hear, "I forgive you, but I'm home now. You can visit, but Heath is my father." She came back inside, cheeks wet. I didn't know what to say. So I sat beside her and let her rest her head on my shoulder. Isaac relaxed. Lahi climbed into my lap, clutching a ragged old scarf. Robert James kept his. Distance after that, sending a letter or a parcel at holidays, but never asking Nora to leave. It wasn't a storybook ending, but it was real. Nora began to smile more easily, as if setting down a heavy stone she'd carried for years. That summer we marked birthdays for the first time. Cakes, crooked and lopsided, gifts wrapped in newspaper, laughter filling every crack in the cabin. Even Lahi, shy as a fawn, sang a whole verse of Old Dan Tucker to Isaac's tuneless harmonica. It was happiness I'd never thought possible. Still, at night I sometimes woke and watched them, sleep, fear gnawing in the dark, that I'd lose them, that I'd fail them, that the past would always have one more claim to make. But every morning they woke and called my name, and the ache eased a little more. I learned then that forgiveness, like family, wasn't something you earned just once. It had to be chosen, over and over, each day the sun came up. I never imagined I'd get old, not in the way folks mean, slow and soft and needing care myself. But the years crept in, subtle as frost on spring grass. I started feeling it first in my knees, then my lungs. Isaac noticed before anyone, bringing me a chair when I tried to chop wood, fetching water without being asked. Nora took over the household ledgers, turning my mess of receipts into tidy stacks. Lahi, now as tall as me, shouldered the pack horse. On supply trips. I was laid up with fever for a spell that autumn. The kids ran the place like a well-oiled clock, hardly needing my help. It scared me and comforted me at once. Proof I'd taught them something worth knowing, but also that they could get along without me if it came to it. One gray morning while I napped by the fire, a letter arrived, edges worn from miles on the trail. The handwriting made my stomach twist, a name I hadn't spoken in years. Rose. My ex-wife's words were careful, almost tender. She wrote that she was dying in a place called Dry Hollow. She'd had a daughter, May, after leaving me, a child not mine by blood. She confessed her mistakes, begged my forgiveness, and asked if I would take May in. She deserves a home. I know you can give her one. I set the letter down, heart pounding in my ears. The kids waited, watching my face. I explained as simply as I could, voice rougher than I wanted. There's a little girl needs a home, like you once did. She's not my blood, but... I swallowed hard. Maybe that doesn't matter. Nora squeezed my hand. Isaac nodded, fierce. Lahi grinned, surprising us all. She can have my old bunk, he said. There wasn't a moment of doubt. I realized then how much these children, my children, had grown. They'd learned to make space, to turn hardship into hospitality. I made the trip to Dry Hollow slow, coughing more than I liked, each mile harder than the last. Rose was already gone when I arrived, but May waited with a satchel and eyes too big for her face. She didn't cry, just stared, measuring me. "Are you my pa now?" she asked, small but steady. I nodded, throat tight. "If you'll have me." We rode back through rain and falling leaves. At home, May met Nora, Isaac, and Lahi like a puppy meeting a pack, cautious but hopeful. Nora took her hand, Isaac hoisted her up to see the view from the porch. Lahi offered a pine cone, grinning. That night I watched them all around the fire, laughter rising. May nestled between the older three as if she'd always belonged. The shape of our family changed again, and I saw my own life anew, proven not by what I'd lost, but by all I'd been brave enough to let in. Years spilled by as gently as spring water. The children, my children, grew into their own, filling every quiet hollow the mountain had left in me. Nora, fierce and sharp-eyed, became a teacher in Grafton, her laugh echoing from the schoolhouse to our porch. Isaac found work on a nearby ranch, married a girl who could outride him and outsmart him too. Lahi, always gentle, made his name as a horse trainer, coaxing the wild out of anything on 4 legs. And May, my last gift, kept the homestead running, with a steady hand and a mischievous smile that reminded me of the boy I'd once been. I grew older still, back bowed, hair white as the birch by the creek. The aches and forgetfulness didn't bother me much, not with the sound of my family filling the house. Most days I watched them come and go, laughter drifting in with the dust, the old fears long faded like last year's snow. One evening, as the light slanted gold through the pines, I gathered them all for supper, May at my right, Nora to my left, Isaac and Lahi squeezed in, passing bread and teasing each other. It hit me then, in the hush after grace. I'd come to the end of something and the beginning of something bigger. I felt tired, but not in the way of defeat, just worn smooth like river stone. I laid down that night and drifted off with their voices in my ears. They tell me I passed peaceful, a soft smile on my lips. Nothing left unsaid or undone. The cabin filled with neighbors and friends, folks from Grafton and further, each with a story about some small kindness or mercy I'd offered. My grave is marked with a single line chosen by May. Father, always and entirely. Nothing else needed saying. Some in town say it's just a story, that no mountain man could buy 3 orphans for $3 and build a family that outlasted scandal, law, and blood. But the truth lives in the hands that tend my grave, in the laughter from the porch, in every stranger welcomed by May with hot coffee and a warm bed, no questions asked. The legend isn't gold or land or a name carved in stone. It's the simple, stubborn proof that love, once chosen, once risked, can echo for generations. May became the heart of that home, never turning away a soul in need, never charging a cent. People say the place still feels alive, as if kindness itself took root and bloomed in the mountain soil. As for me, I found what I thought was lost, not just a family, but a reason to stay, to hope, to fight for something bigger than myself. My legacy lives on in laughter and forgiveness, in the quiet courage to let the world back in.